Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today what we're going to do is we are going to review the population pyramids that we went over in class, just to help any of those that either weren't present or that technology was cutting out on you. And then we're also going to go into the demographic transition model. So first, the review. So with the population structure, the things that we look at mostly are the fertility, mortality, death rate, and then we also look at the percentage of sex and ages. So these things vary not only across the space but also across time for each country. Geographers have come up with this special population pyramid that allows you to visually see a country's population structure at a particular time. On the x-axis, you see it goes from either population, number of population, or in this case, a percent of the total population. But most of the time what you see is you actually see a number. So you'll see like millions of people or thousands of people, and it will tell you that. Up the y-axis, we actually have the age group. So over here we have the age groups. And it goes in 5-year intervals. And then on the right side, we have female. On the left side, we have male. And then that gives us an idea of how the population in that country at that given time is broken down. And then each one of these has a stage. So something else that we didn't cover in class, but that is important, is that the population structure on the population pyramid also shows us the dependency ratio. And what that is that's just the number of people that are dependent on the overall population. So the number of people that are too old or too young to work. And then you look at the people compared to that who is in the productive years. So that is generally people that are 0 to 14 and 65 and older. Larger dependency ratios do mean greater financial burden. And they also mean that, or they also could mean that there is an aging population. So that now you have less young to take care of the individuals that are retired, no longer in their producing years. And then the sex ratio is the simple number of males per 100 females in the population. Developed countries have more females than males because they tend to live 7 years longer than males. Here is the United States. Here's a population pyramid that instead at the x-axis, instead of having percent of the population, this is actually population in millions, like I said before. You can see that the dependency ratio for the United States is not incredibly large right now, but as that population continues to age, especially that 60 to 64 range, that 55, 59, all the way to 40, as they continue to age, you're going to start to see that dependency ratio go up, especially if individuals in the United States continue to have less children, because then that bottom area down here is actually going to get smaller. This is China, and for some reason it's turning blurry. I do apologize for that. But you can see China has this back and forth. They have this large age group, 45 to 49, kind of goes out really down the 35-year mark, have another bulge around the 25-year-olds, and then now you see the steady stream kind of going downwards here. And we're going to talk about China's particular policies when we go over population policies later in the unit. So that's the review of the population pyramids. Now this is the demographic transition model. It has 4 stages, or a possible 5th, which we'll get into, that attempts to explain the natural kind of decrease and increase in the natural increase. That sounds confusing, but as the natural increase rises and falls, it's done naturally But it tries to explain, well, why does this thing happen? Why do we go through a natural increase that goes up and down? And then historically, no country has ever reverted back to a previous stage, although not completely, but they have gone into a phase that seems like they have gone backwards. All right, this is a graph of the demographic transition model. So the stages, stage 1 or low growth, stage 2, high growth, stage 3, decreasing growth, and stage 4, low growth again, shows that as a country moves into development, they move this direction. So during the low growth, you see this kind of up and down, not really a natural increase because the deaths and the births are relatively the same, or that the deaths actually are greater than the births. But then as we move into stage 2, which is that first pyramid, right, the one that actually looks like a pyramid, you start to see death rate decrease. Birth rate kind of stays the same. And that way means that the population will go up because that natural increase as death rates go down, natural increase will automatically increase. And then you go into stage 3 where you see birth rate start to plummet with death rate. And then so too does the natural increase until you get all the way to stage 4 where you have birth rate almost meets death rate, and then the natural increase goes all the way down. And then we'll talk about a possible stage 5 later. So what does this actually mean? So demographic transition model, stage 1, low growth. Like I said, very high birth and death rates. That means that there's hardly any, if at all any, natural increase in the country. No country is presently in stage 1, although there's a little caveat to that because countries that are in civil war can be in stage 1. The problem is we just don't have any way of measuring it while they're in the civil war. We won't know really until they come out of the civil war whether or not that population has increased or decreased or what's going on. More than likely it's going to be in stage 1 though. So they'd more than likely have decreased. So that means like places like Syria are possibly in stage 1. Stage 2, the high growth, is marked by a rapidly declining death rate and the continuing of a very high birth rate, which leads to a very high natural increase. Somewhere around the Industrial Revolution, or just before the Industrial Revolution, Europe and North America went through this. In the 1950s, we saw other places such as Africa, Asia, and Latin America go through this. And it really had to go with the medical improvements that are happening in the United States, in Europe, that led to those same techniques being adapted in Africa, Asia, and Latin America almost simultaneously. And that also has to do with technology, the ability to move quickly. Stage 3, moderate growth, is a rapid decrease in birth rates. Although the natural increase is still high, it's falling. And so they're still going up in population, and they're still going up very, very rapidly. Not as rapidly as they are at the end of stage 2, but the overall population numbers are going to increase significantly. So the population grows because CBR is still greater than CDR. Most North American countries and European countries transitioned in stage 3 during the first half of the 20th century. So they came out of stage 3 kind of in the 1950s, honestly, when the medical revolution was really taking place. Stage 4 is low growth or no growth, and it's a very low death rate, very low birth rate, almost reaching death rate. The population gains are very minimal, if any, and you can reach zero population growth when CDR and CBR actually meet. No population change is not something that is actually going to happen, although it is possible. Usually you go into the negative. And then population change results mostly from immigration. We see this in Europe and the United States greatly. And that's kind of why our numbers keep us in stage 4 longer and possibly even move us back to stage 3, is because those places those individuals are coming from, their culture has not caught up with our feeling about children and how expensive it can be in a stage 4 country to raise them. And so the first generation tends to have a lot of children, and then they back off after that. So there's 2 reasons why birth rates go down. Education and healthcare are the top reason, and contraception is the second reason, although contraception is only made possible through healthcare. So improving the economic conditions that increase wealth means that it's more expensive for children, and that means that people will have less children because now they're more expensive. Health programs also seek to lower by telling people about the bad of having sex and the consequences, I guess. Better educated about what is coming from it, how much a baby costs, how much time babies take up, all those things. And so as people are educated on those, they postpone having children for later and later times. And then contraception goes into the sex education as well, the health education, saying, look, this is a way of us to continue doing the thing that we like to do, but not reaping all of the consequences that come from it. There are certain religions that do not believe in contraception because their religion tells them that they must procreate. And so because of that, some of those are met with a little bit of resistance. So here's the percent of women using family planning, and that means contraception, birth control, things like that. And you can tell in America, 75% and above. In Europe, it kind of varies depending on where they're at, anywhere between 50% and 100%, except for where if you look at Belarus, and that's a unique situation. Most of Asia now has some family planning, although not to the extent as Europe and other nations. But if you look at Africa, you see that the sub-Saharan Africa doesn't really have a lot of family planning. So this is the percent of total population. And you can see 1950s, 2010, and 2050 projected. You can tell how the United States is going backwards. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Japan, not the United States. So Japan. And you can see while there's a possible stage 5 where declining population. So 1950s, they're growing. And you can actually see this right here. If anybody knows anything about history, 1950s, this age range right here, that is the World War. World War II right there, kind of ate into it. So then in 2010, you can see this late stage 4, early stage 5 pyramid, or developed pyramid. And then now this 2050 pyramid, inverted pyramid, with a declining population. So we'll see